And I do believe we are live again. So, hello everybody. If you're joining us, let me just see if people are joining us. Yes, people are joining us. This is great. We're live again for day 2. Hello and welcome. If you didn't join us for day 1, you're more welcome. I hope you really enjoy this day. We've got a great lineup for you. So I'm just going to wait for everybody to join us and let us know you're there. And yes, tell us where you're from. I see we've got George Matsufuji from Panama and Brian in Virginia. Who else have we got? Martin Koob in Toronto. Hello, Martin. And Steve in Namibia. This is great. It's good to see you all. Oh, yes, my goodness. Okay. If you haven't already joined the Slack channel for this glorious day, I'm just going to put that up for you now. So you can go and join. Hopefully you can see that button now. If you can confirm you can see the button, somebody. And that's just for you to hang out and chat to each other and stay in touch throughout the day. So I'm here again with Eleanor.
Hello.
So, and she is doing our Great Beginners course again, and the first set went down really well with the to-do list. I've got lots of great feedback on that. And today she's doing the browser, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, today we're doing Browse It. So we're using the browser widget so that we can put a browser inside our app. So what we'll be doing is we'll be making a small app for a restaurant, which is just using their browser, but turning it into an app for them. So yeah, we'll see how to do that. But then obviously there's lots of uses for the browser widget. So hopefully it'll be a nice, useful lesson.
Great. Okay, I can see loads of people from all around the world. Somebody in Australia, they've got up either very early or very late. I get confused. Hi, Damien. Well done. Okay, I'm going to hand you full control, Eleanor.
Okay.
So over to you and let the training begin.
Great, so welcome everybody. Like I said, today we are going to look at how to use the browser widget in an app. So we'll actually be creating a complete app for a small restaurant, and we'll be doing that mostly using the browser widget. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly show you the little website that we'll be using. So give me a second, just turn this on. Site that we'll be using. So this is Stevie's Pizzeria, which Stephen from marketing made this little website for us to use. Unfortunately, he won't be delivering us any pizza, but what we have here is just a little website, just four pages. So there's the home page, the menu, the reservations, and the contact page. And we will be just embedding this little website here inside a browser widget in our app. So we're effectively just creating an app version of the website. So I'll just turn infinite page there, and I'll just, again, we're doing it like last time. So there's 4 short videos. So we'll have the videos and we'll have a little chat in between. So I'll just start the first one now.
So here I have LiveCode open. I'm using LiveCode 9 DP7. As long as you're using a version of 9, that should be fine. Later on when we come to setting some standalone settings, DP7 looks slightly different in the iOS settings than previous versions, but that's all the options are the same, it just looks slightly different. So as long as you're using a version of 9, you'll be able to follow along. So as always, the first thing we're going to do is create a new stack. So we go to the File menu, New Stack, and we're going to create it at iPhone 5 size. Next thing we're going to do is set some stack properties. So we go to the Object menu and choose Stack Inspector, and we're going to set the name of our stack to Browse It, And we'll set the title to browse it as well, but with a space. So you'll see here our title is now showing. Now at this point, I'm just going to save my stack onto the desktop so that we're ready to save it when we add some more controls later. Now we're ready to start creating our UI. Now the user interface for the Browse It app is only going to have 2 controls, and we're only going to have 1 card, so we don't need to create any more cards. Just 2 controls. We're going to have a browser widget to show the web page, so we'll have that here, and we're going to have a navigation bar to allow us to switch between the screens by changing the web page. So we're going to start by creating our navigation bar. So it's up here in the Tools palette in the Widgets section at the top. So drag on a navigation bar, and we're just going to place it down at the bottom of our stack. Now I'm on Mac, so my navigation bar looks like an iOS navigation bar. If you're on Windows, it'll look more like an Android one, but you'll be able to recognize it from common apps like your podcast app or maybe your mail app, where you've got these different options down here, and that lets you switch between different screens. Now we're going to set some properties. I'll just quickly close that. Make sure you've got your navigation bar selected. Go to the object menu and open up the object inspector. Now the first thing we're going to do is set the name. So I'm just going to change this so it's just navigation. That's just to make it a little bit shorter when we're writing our code later. And what we're going to do is we're going to update our navigation data. So you'll see here, what we've got here matches what's shown in the navigation bar down here. And what we want to do is we're going to show options that correspond to the options on the web page that we're making an app for. So if we have a quick look at the web page, you'll see in the menu that there's a home page, there's menu, reservations, and contact. And you'll see that if we have a look at one of these, if we go to the menu page, you'll see that the actual URLs are just menu, or just /menu at the end, and it's similar for reservations and contact. So we'll be able to use those labels to actually build the URLs to navigate around. So we come back to our app, and what we're going to do is we're going to update our navigation data. So we want to change contacts to home. So to change the text, you just click on it and it becomes editable. So we'll have home, menu, reservations, and contact. And you'll see that those have updated there. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to choose some suitable icons. So just like in the first lesson where we used an icon picker for the SVG widget and for the header bar, what we'll be doing is we'll be clicking on the icon here and choosing the one we want to use. So I'm just going to scroll until I find the home icon. So that's it there, and you'll see my icon has changed down here. Now just like with the header bar widget, there's a second icon here which is the highlighted icon. Again, we just want these to be the same, so when we select one here it'll automatically update this one as well. But if for some reason you want your highlighted icon to be different than your standard icon, you can select it here. Now for the menu icon, I'm going to use the food icon, which is a knife and fork. Now, of course, you can use any icons that you think are suitable here. You don't have to use these ones. If you think that a menu looks more like a list of items, then feel free to use any icon that you want, but I'm going to use food. Then for reservations, I'm going to use the clock. And for contact, I'm going to use the phone. Now again, as with the header bar, we want to make sure that our names match up to our items. So we'll have home, menu, reservations, and contact. Now this is because when we want to find out which of these items is selected, this value is the one that will be returned. These are just labels. So just like with a normal button, you can have a label and a name. You can change the label and it won't actually change the name of the control. So we actually get returned the name of the item that's selected. So we just want to make sure that these match up the values that we want to get back. Now some other properties that we have here, you can see that you can also change the display style so it just shows icons or just shows text. We want it to show both. And here you'll see that it will tell us which item is selected. So currently item 1 is selected and the selected item name is home. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set some colours here. If I quickly show you the web page again, you'll see that it has quite a nice color scheme, and we want our navigation bar to tie in with that. I've chosen a red and a green color that goes with the sort of the pasta, the tomatoes, the basil, but you can use any colors that you like in here. So in the property inspector, I'm going to go to the colors pane, and first I'm going to change the item color. So just click next to the item color and you'll get a color picker. So I'm going to set this to a kind of dark red color. So I'm going to use 106, 50, 34, and you'll see that those have changed color. This is still blue because I haven't changed the selected item color yet, but we'll do that now. So just click on the color picker there, and for the selected color I'm going to use a green color. So I'm going to use 66, 88, 39. And there you'll see that my selected item has changed to that nice green color. Now while I'm in here, I'm just going to go to the position pane and I'm going to lock the size and position of my navigation bar. That's just so that if I come to select it later, I don't accidentally move it. Now the only other control we need here is a browser widget. So again, it's in the widgets section of the tools palette. So drag on a browser widget and just expand it so that it fills the rest of the space on the stack. Now we're going to set some properties. So I'm going to set the name, but browser is fine, so I'm just going to leave that. At the moment I'm going to lock the size and position of this one as well for the same reason as before. And just to begin with, I'm going to set the URL here in the property inspector. So I'm going to set it to the URL of our web page that we're working with. So it's http and it's purple2.com. Now we're in edit mode, so the browser looks like this, but if we switch to run mode, it will actually load the page and we'll be able to see it. So if I just go to the tools palette, switch to run mode, and you'll see there's our web page displayed in our stack in our browser widget. So that's the UI complete.
Yes, sorry, I think that video ended a bit abruptly there, but that was just the end. That's the UI complete. So we've got our two controls there. So we don't see any questions in the chat at the moment, so I think we'll just move straight on to the next part of the lesson. If you do have any questions, just pop them in the chat, and we'll either reply in the chat or we'll reply in the sort of question section in between the videos so that everybody can hear the answers. So if you do have any questions, just pop them in there. But in the meantime, I'll just start the next video.
So now we've finished the UI, we need to start adding some functionality. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some code to our navigation bar to allow us to switch between pages in the browser. So go into edit mode, select your navigation bar and open up the object script from the object menu. Now you'll see here this has a default script in here. And you'll see here that it handles the highlight changed message. Now that's the exact message we want to use. We only want to do something when the selected item changes here. So when the user selects a different item in the list. And what we want to do is we want to change the page that we're looking at. So you'll see here that the default script puts the highlighted item of me and the highlighted item name of me. So it just shows you what's going on here. So this would put 1 and home into the message box. If we clicked here, it would get 2 and menu. So what we'll do is we'll just delete this, and what we're going to do is we're going to call a custom command when the highlight changes, and we're going to call the command set page, and we're going to pass it the highlighted item name of me. So what this will do is this will call set page custom command, and it will pass whichever item is selected. So the text item, so menu or reservations or home or contact, whichever one is selected, will be passed to this set page command. And what we'll do is we'll implement that set page command on our card script. Now the reason we're doing this is because although we call set page from here, we may also want to call it from other places. For example, later on, what we want to do when the app is opened for the first time is make sure we're always on the home page. So that's why we're using a custom command, because it could be called from different places within our app and we don't want to have to keep repeating that code. So to add our set page command to the card script, we go to the object menu, open up the card script, and we add the command set page, and we give it the parameter p_page. So this parameter will contain the name of the highlighted item. Now what we want to do here is we want to construct a URL, and then we're going to set the URL property of our browser widget to that URL to show the page that we're interested in. So we'll start by declaring a variable TURL. And what we want to do is we want to look at the value in our parameter and work out what the value in that URL parameter will be. So for menu, reservations and contact, we know that it will be purple2.com/menu or reservations or contact, and if it's home, it'll just be purple2.com. So what we'll say is if p_page is home, then we'll do one thing, otherwise we'll do something else. So if p_page is home, then we'll put http://purple2.com into TURL. Otherwise, we'll put that, so that's the base URL, but then we'll also put a / and then we'll put the page after it. So if it's home, we just go to purple2.com. If it's menu, we go to purple2.com/menu. If it's reservations, we go to /reservations, etc. And then what we do is we set the URL property of our browser widget. So we set the URL of widget browser to TURL. And remember to apply that and make sure that there aren't any errors. So let's check that out now, check that it works. So we switch to run mode. We're currently on the home page. Now if we click on menu, it should change us to the menu page. If we go to reservations, it'll go to the reservations page, contact, and home. So all we've done there is we've checked to see which item is selected, we've got to the corresponding URL, and we've set the URL property of our browser widget to that URL. Now, as I mentioned earlier, when we open up the app, we want to make sure that we're on the home page. So what we'll do is, again, in our card script, we're going to add a pre-open card handler. Now, the pre-open card message is sent to a card before the user sees it. So you can do any setup, any resetting or moving things around in there, and it'll all happen invisibly before the card is actually made visible to the user. So I'm just going to put it at the top here. It doesn't have to be at the top. I just always like to put my pre-open card at the top because it's the thing that happens first. So we say on pre-open card, and what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we're on the home page by saying set page home. So that will set our URL to the home URL. And then we always want to make sure that our navigation bar corresponds to the URL that's actually being shown. So what we do is we set the highlighted item name of widget navigation to home as well. So we'll show the home page and we'll make sure that home is selected in our navigation. We want to make sure that these always correspond to each other because otherwise it will create a confusing experience for the user. If you've got reservations selected but you're on the menu page, it can be confusing. We always want to make sure our user knows exactly where they are.
Okay, so that was the second part. So we've now set up our navigation bar so that we can switch between different screens. Now we've got one question about adding more items to the navigation bar. So I'll just quickly show you how you would do that. Sorry, need to share my screen first. Make a quick new stack and add a navigation bar. So here's the navigation bar with its standard items. Now we saw how to change the labels and the icons, but if we want to add another icon, you can just click on the plus button after whichever item you want to add it after. So if we want to add it at the end, we can click here and it just creates a new item. But if we want to add something in between contacts and favorites, then we can click the add button here and it'll put it in between. Equally, if you want to delete items, you just use the delete item button here and it will delete those items that you've just added. Now, the other question that we had was about whether you can add custom items. So at the moment, you can only use the built-in icon set, but we do have an enhancement request in our database for adding custom icons. So that's something that we'll be hoping to add in the future, because obviously it creates more flexibility if you can add your own icons to the navigation bar or the header bar or to the SVG widget. These all at the moment, the SVG widget is a bit different because you can actually put the path data in itself, so you can put any SVG path in here and display it in an SVG widget. But the navigation bar and the header, they both just at the moment allow you to choose from the built-in sets. We're hoping to add that as another feature. Now let me just see if there's any other questions at the moment. So the only other question is about slide out menus, and I don't believe that we do have a slide out menu at the moment. That's something that would lend itself to be implemented as a widget. The widgets feature was just added in LiveCode 8, and it allows you to create custom controls using another sort of version of the LiveCode language, which is called LiveCode Builder. So these are all written in LiveCode Builder. So these are actually, as opposed to how you used to have to make custom controls where you would have to make a group and have to put all the controls in and group them together and add the code. Widgets are actually, they're self-contained little atomic controls. So a slide out menu might be a nice candidate for that. If you want to try it yourself, then you should attend Ali's widget course, and we've also got the widget course online. And it's always worth, if there's things you're interested in, adding an enhancement request to our bug database so that the dev team know about the things that people want. I'm just going to, oh, sorry, I've got another question here. So what happens when you click the menu icon that is in the page? I'm not sure that I'm not sure if I know quite what you mean by that question. Menu item, this one here, perhaps that's just for repositioning. So that allows you to reposition your controls within the navigation bar, rather so you don't have to delete them and recreate them in different places. You can just drag them around to reorder them. That might not have been what you Sorry, I'm just having a quick look at the chat here. Sorry about the infinite web page there. So slide out menu would need to be able to be layered above a browser widget. I'm not sure if you can layer at the moment. I'll just have, that's something that I'd have to look at, and maybe we can get back to you on that. And in your app that shows the web page, do you mean the actual, like when you're showing the browser, there's a menu in there? That's just a part of the web page itself. If I'm not quite understanding the question here, maybe just if you can just clarify in the chat, and I'll get back to you after this section. And otherwise, I think we'll move on to the next video, but please do put the question in the chat and I'll try and address it in the next section. So I'll just start up the next video now.
Now, following on from that, saying that we always want our navigation bar to represent the page that's shown here, you can, of course, also navigate around just using the options in the browser. So if we actually click here, we get some options. So what we want to do is we also want to make sure that our navigation bar represents the page that the user actually has selected. So now we're on reservations because we've picked it in the menu inside the browser, but this looks like we're on the home page. So what we want to do is we want to update the navigation bar whenever the user goes to another page, even if it is within the browser. And we can do that using the browser navigate begin message. So the browser navigate begin message is sent to the browser widget whenever a navigation starts, and that doesn't matter if it was created by the navigation bar or by some other control, or if it actually happens in the browser. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to add it to our card script. So in this case, we'll be saying on browser navigate begin. So we'll say when we get the browser navigate begin message. And what this gets is this gets a parameter p_URL. So it sends the URL that has been navigated to along with the message, so we can check the URL and we can do something with it. So what we want to do is we'll create a variable local t page to store the page that's been selected. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the URL to find out which one of these items we should select. Now, if you remember, our URL is either purple2.com if it's home, and if it has a slash something at the end, then we know that that's the page. So what we'll do is we'll set the item delimiter. Now, setting the item delimiter allows you to refer to parts of a piece of text using different items. So the default item delimiter is a comma. So if you've got a comma separated list of things and you want to get item 2, you'll get the second item in the comma separated list. But what we want to do is we want to look at the last part of our URL. So we will set the item delimiter to a slash, and we'll put the last item of p_URL into t_page. So that will tell us what page we're on. It'll either be menu, reservations, contact, or something else. And if it's something else, we'll go to home. So what we'll do after we've done this, after we've finished, we'll set the item delimiter back to comma. And then what we'll do is we'll check to see if the value that's in t_page is one of our navigation items. We can only set it if it's one of these. So what we'll do is we'll say if t_page is among the items of, and what we'll do is we'll get the item names of widget navigation. So if you remember when we set the item names of widget navigation, it was home, menu, reservations, contact. So the item names property will be a comma separated list of those 4 words. So we're saying if t_page is among the items of the item names of widget navigation, then what we can do is we can just set the value of the navigation bar, the highlighted item in the navigation bar, so directly. Otherwise, we'll just default to highlighting the home item. So if it's home, menu, reservations, or contact, then we'll set the highlighted item name of widget navigation to t_page. So as long as it's one of these valid items, we'll set it to the one that's been selected. Otherwise, we'll just set it to home. So I'm just going to copy this. So we'll set the highlighted item name of widget navigation to home. So we always want to have a default because otherwise we'd end up with nothing selected. So if it's menu, reservations, contact, or home, it'll get selected. If it's anything else, then it'll automatically select home for us. So now when the user navigates in the browser, the navigation bar will be updated. So let's check that that works. Make sure you're in run mode so that you can interact with the browser. Let's make sure we're on the home page just to get started. So now in the menu, if we choose contact, you'll see that the contact item is now selected and we're on the contact page, and we can still use our navigation bar as well. We can go menu and it will take us to the menu page. So now, whichever way the user navigates using the navigation bar or in the browser itself, we're always going to show the correct value in our navigation bar.
Okay, so that is how you can respond to the navigation that the user actually does inside the browser. So even if they browse around using links and menu buttons and things inside the web browser, you can actually see what they're doing and you can respond to those messages and make sure that you update your UI to reflect those changes that they've actually made inside the browser. So we did it with Browser Navigate Begin, but you can do it with Browser Navigate End. You can choose when to do it. Just have a look in the documentation. That's actually something that I meant to mention. I'm just going to quickly share my screen again, is how to find the documentation for widgets in the LiveCode dictionary stack. So I'll just turn this on. It will open up on the LiveCode script dictionary here. If you want to find the full documentation for any of the widgets, then you click on the menu bar and they're all in here. So if you want to look at the browser, select the browser, and here's all the browser documentation. So each of the widgets has its own documentation section in the dictionary. So if you're looking for widget documentation, just remember that you have to, at the moment, you have to choose it from the drop down here. So if you can't find what you're looking for, just make sure that you are using that. Okay, so let me come back to my main screen. Okay, so got a question here. What happens if you add more items than available space in the menu at the bottom? So it will automatically, it'll make them as small as it can, but obviously there's going to be a limit to how many you can actually fit on. So it won't go onto a second line or anything. It'll just get to a point where your navigation bar is too big to actually fit on the screen. If you've got that many, you might want to think about how your navigation bar and how your app is actually structured. You probably don't want too many along the bottom. It's supposed to be for sort of like main screens in your app. So if you want to use the navigation bar, that would usually be for main screens. And then obviously within that you could also move around. But yeah, it won't go into a second line. So you would either have to rearrange your app a bit, or you'd have to rethink just how it's structured and how you want to allow people to navigate around. Okay, so I've got a couple more questions. Is there an OAuth 1 dictionary? That I will need to check. I'll have a look at while we're watching the last video, and then I'll get back to you on that one if that's okay. That's for Damien. And then a couple of questions from Sandro. Is there a command to clear the browser cache, and can you restrict the clickable area? The only icon this problem is when one clicks the navigation bar for tablets and few icons. So I think, and I'm not 100% sure in this, but I think on the navigation bar, the area for each sort of item is the whole square that's around. So if you've got 5 items, it's basically divided up into 5 sections, and you can click on anywhere in that area. Again, I'll check that quickly and get back to you on that one, but I think so. And then Tom's asked, how do we get the nav bar and widget control to fit various screen sizes? So we'll actually, we'll look at that just briefly in the last video, but basically LiveCode has a property that you can set on a stack. It's called the full screen mode, and it will tell your app how to scale depending on the screen size of the app that it's on. So we're going to use exact fit, which will just scale up or down your app to use all the space on the screen. But there's other options that will, so there's letterbox, which puts those black bars at the top and the bottom and maintains the aspect ratio. There's other options. So it's just one property that you have to set on the stack, which will tell it how you want it to scale. If you want to do something more complicated, than what those options allow for, then you can actually script it so you can handle either when the app starts up or when an app changes size. You get a message, and you could lay out all your controls using script. So you could set the width and the height and the top left and things like that in code if you want to do something a bit more complicated. But I would always have a look at the full screen mode first, because that's just one property that you have to set, and then LiveCode will do all the work for you. A couple more questions here. Can you download the page in a cache to use the site when there is no internet? That's another thing I'll have to double check. I know that you can use load URL in LiveCode script. I'm not sure about the browser widget itself, but I will check that as well. And then Jonathan has asked, could the script... So Jonathan's asked if you could script the navigation bar to simulate scrolling right and left and reveal as many icons as you want. So you could do something like that. So you could either do it using touch messages. So you could put a mobile scroller around the navigation bar and actually allow the user to scroll it if they want to. So you could use a mobile scroller to do that, or you could add sort of left and right or forward and back arrows at the sides and just move it across. So basically, if a control is too big for the screen, it's still there, it's just off screen, and you could script it. So you could set the value of left. So the left of the navigation bar would normally be 0, so it'd be up against the left-hand side of the stack itself. But if you set that to negative numbers, if you set that to -50, it would move so that the left-hand side of it is 50 pixels off screen, so you could actually move it across the screen. So if any of your controls are too big, you can sort of move them into view. So you could either do that using a scroll, using touch messages, or using controls that will let you move to the right and left. Okay, so there's a couple of things I'm going to look into while we watch the last video, but I'll just start that up for you now.
Now the last step is to build our app into a standalone. Now what we've done here is we've basically built a mobile app here. So this is for iOS or Android. It would work on desktop, but just due to the design, the way we've designed it, this is very much designed to be a mobile app. Now, although we've built our app at iPhone 5 size, now out in the market there are hundreds of different phones with different screen resolutions. We want to make sure that our app displays nicely whatever device the user has. So LiveCode gives you some ways to control this. You can choose how an app will scale to fit onto different screens. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this in the stack script. So when the app is first opened, we set how we want it to be scaled. So to do this, we'll go to the object menu and we'll open up the stack script, and we'll do it in pre-open stack. So as soon as the app is opened, we'll set what we call the full screen mode property. So we say on pre-open stack, and it's just a property of the stack, it's the full screen mode. So we set the full screen mode of this stack to, and there are a number of different ways that you can choose to scale your app, but we're going to use exact fit. So exact fit will use up all the screen real estate, so it'll go right to the edges. There's letterbox, which puts black bars at the top and the bottom and maintains the aspect ratio. Have a look in the dictionary to see all the different options, but we're going to use exact fit just so that it fully scales and uses up all the screen real estate, whatever device it's running on. So we've added that now, we'll just save that. And what we're going to do is we're just going to test it first. So we're going to test it on the iOS simulator. So to build our standalone, or to test our standalone, the first thing we need to do is set some standalone application settings. So we open those up from the file menu. You'll see here in general we've got browse it. Now what we want to do is we want to choose the inclusions that are included with our standalone application. We're using widgets, so we just want to make sure that those are included. So in the inclusions section, choose select inclusions for the standalone application. Then we'll go to the inclusions pane and we'll choose the two widgets that we want to include. So we have used the browser widget and the navigation bar. So we want to make sure that those are both included. Then we're going to build for iOS and Android, but we'll set up iOS first. So go to the iOS pane, tick build for iOS. And here we've got some settings that we want to set. So we've got our display name. Now we want to set the internal app ID as well. So I'll set this to com.livecode.browsit. This is just used when you actually put the device on the phone to differentiate between different apps. So if you set the internal app ID and then you update the app, it will replace the app that's already on there if it's got the same internal app ID. So you always want to change it, otherwise you'll end up with apps overwriting each other when you don't really want them to. Now, I don't think we need to set anything else in here. We're happy with all the defaults. We want the status bar, we want the initial supported orientation to be portrait. We do have one requirement, that just because our little sample web app is not on an HTTPS address, we need to turn off ATS. So that's fine, we'll just disable that. This is not recommended and it's not ideal, but this is just a sample. So for the moment, just to get it running on our iOS simulator, we'll need to turn off or turn on disable ATS. Then we're going to set some icons. So you can find the icons in the resources for this lesson. So they're different sizes depending on for different devices. So we'll set the iPhone, which is 5757, high res 114114, iPhone 7 high res, and the iPhone 6 Plus. We don't have any iPad icons in here, but you could add those if you wanted to, and we're not going to use a splash screen. So that's our iOS settings done. For Android, it's a bit simpler. You just tick Android again, set your identifier, choose your icon. So we've also got an Android one here. And the only thing you need to ensure you've got selected for Android is that you need to give it internet permissions. Okay, so now we've set up our standalone application settings, we're just going to test on iOS. So as we said in the first lesson, there's some additional setup for iOS and Android, some extra things that you need to install. I've got those all installed, so I can just go ahead and test directly, but if you haven't done that to test on the iOS simulator, then you'll need to follow those lessons. They're linked to in the slides. But here I'm just going to choose the iPhone simulator, and then I'm going to click on the test button, save my stack. And here's my app running in the iPhone simulator. You'll see that although this is an iPhone 6, it's scaled perfectly because we set that full screen mode, and we can navigate around using our navigation bar. And similarly for Android, you can test directly onto an Android device, and you can test in the Android emulator if you've got those set up. Again, you would just choose the test target. It would show you your Android options here, and you can use the test or the test here. And of course, just like for the first app, the app in lesson 1, you can also build standalone application files that you can send out. So if you want to build an iPhone app to distribute, then you need to have a distribution profile, and you would choose File, Save as Standalone Application, and that would build you a .app file that could be distributed through the App Store. For Android, it will create you a .apk file that can be distributed through the Google Play Store or just by email. So you would just, if you want to save it, you can just save a standalone application. That'll create the files. But for testing, it's really useful to be able to just quickly use the test menu to test on the iOS simulator or on the Android emulator or directly on an Android device. So that's the end of this lesson. Hopefully you find this useful. You can of course use a browser object to use a browser anywhere in your app. You might not want to use it to create a full app. You might have, maybe you've got some documentation on a web page that you also want to be accessible from inside your app. You could use a browser object for that. You could use it to display a login screen or to sign up for something if you've got all your signing up for an account set up on your website and you don't want to have to re-implement it, you could use a browser to just show people the account sign up page on your web page, but inside the app. There's all sorts of uses for it. So we'd love to see what you do. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so that is the end of our Browse It app. So hopefully you find that useful and you can think of some uses for browsers inside your app. So just to come back to some of the questions that we looked at before, again, I'm just going to share my screen. Library, that's documented here. So just like for the browser, you can go to the menu here and there's an OAuth library in there. And then the other questions. So you asked about restricting the clickable area. So at the moment, I just did a quick test and actually the clickable area is a whole area around the item in the navigation bar. So something like that, if you wanted to be able to restrict that to perhaps just the icon itself. Like I said before, if there are enhancement requests that you have, do put them into our quality control center so that the dev team are aware that these are things that people are interested in. Of course, if you wanted to, you could also take the navigation bar widget code and modify it yourself if you're feeling brave, or if you want to try something new. That's another option, is that you could actually create a navbar too that has a feature like that if you wanted to use it. And about clearing the browser cache or downloading pages, as far as I can tell, there isn't a way to do those at the moment. Again, I'll chat to the dev team about that, as maybe that there's something that I'm missing. And if not, we can add, like I say, enhancement requests or bug reports to the quality control center for the dev team to pick up. So I'm just going to come back and see if there's any more questions. About inserting a PDF in a mobile app using LiveCode. So you could use the browser widget to display a PDF. We set the URL parameter to an HTTP URL, but you can set it to a local file URL as well, and it will display your PDF. So all you have to do is set the URL to file:// and then the path to your PDF. And if you're putting it into a standalone, then make sure that you include the PDF that you want to display in the standalone application settings. In the copy files, we just copy that PDF file in there, and then make sure that the path points to that file where it would be inside the application bundle. So you can, for that, you can use the special folder path resources, which will point to the resources file inside the application bundle that works on iOS and Android. So any resources you include would point there, and you would just be able to point the URL of your browser widget to that local file.
Lovely video, Eleanor. I can't see you.
No video. Oh, I've got it. It's turned on. Let me I'll turn it off and turn it on again.
There we go.
Oh, okay. So I was just talking, waving my hands around, so I don't think you missed anything. So I've got a few more questions here. So Martha's asked if the nav widget is case sensitive, and it's not case sensitive. By default, nothing in LiveCode is case sensitive, unless you're doing particular things. You set the case sensitive property to true if you're working with text and you want to sort somewhere where the case would matter. But generally, LiveCode is not case sensitive, so you don't have to worry about that too much. And then Cyril's asked, is there a way to have the web page smaller so that it fits in the screen? I don't think that there is. I think the browser widget will automatically show you scroll bars if they're needed. I don't think that there is a zoom property on the browser widget at the moment. Again, that might be something that would be really useful. And so that would be a nice enhancement request. Again, guys are coming up with some nice features for us to implement. But I don't think that there is zooming at the moment in the browser itself. Oh, and Martha's asked about the case sensitivity of the page URL and the nav item. Or I didn't get highlighting. Oh, okay, so that, yeah. So when we did the part where if you clicked on the menu button and then we used that to construct the URL, the case would have to match there because the URL is case sensitive. So that's actually a really good point. I'll add a note to the slides to point that out. I hadn't thought of that, but that's a really good point that you have to be you do have to be careful about case when you're constructing a URL. So thank you, Martha. That's a nice spot. I'll put a note in the slides for that for anybody who's looking at the slides after this. Heather has posted the link to our quality control centre. It's quality.livecode.com. You'll need to sign up for an account if you want to report things, but yes, if you want to add any feature requests or bugs, that's the best place to report them, so that the dev team do actually know about the things that people are interested in that they want to see. So we've got a few minutes left, so we can have any other questions if you want to. And if not, I think Heather, it's Trevor is up next. And
yeah, that's right, Trevor is up next, and I will be ending the session shortly if we don't have any more questions.
And the only other thing I would say is that if you're interested in widgets, if you're interested in, say, adding a feature that you want to an existing widget or writing your own widgets, then Ali's widget course is also really good. If you want to dive into LiveCode Builder, I would point you to that.
Ali's got some good stuff coming up later this afternoon, or this morning, or this evening, depending on where you are, guys. All right, then. Well, that was great, Eleanor. I think that seems to conclude this session. So I am going to end this one. Okay. Don't forget to check your emails for your joining link for the next session. And
I was just going to say, if you do have any questions that come up that we didn't address here, then we've got the Slack channel for today. So if you post them up there, we'll pick them up. Okay. Is that it, Heather? Are we done?
That's it. I think we're done.
Okay, thanks everyone.
See you again in a few minutes.